Well, are some myths more or less true than others?
They're true in different senses, do you see? Here's a whole mythology based on the insight that transcends duality. Ours is a mythology that's based on the insight of duality. And so our religion tends to be ethical in its accent. Sin and atonement, right and wrong. It started with a sin, you see. In other words, moving out of the mythological zone, the Garden of Paradise, where there is no time, and where men and women don't even know that they're different from each other. The two are just creatures. And God and man are practically the same. He walks in the cool of the evening in the garden where we are. And then they eat the apple, the knowledge of the pairs of opposites. And man and woman then cover their shame. They're different. God and man, they're different. Man and nature is against man. I once heard a wonderful lecture by Daisetsu Suzuki. You remember this wonderful old Zen philosopher who was over here? He was in his 90s. He started a lecture in Switzerland that I heard in Ascona. He stood up with his hands on his side and he said, God against man, man against God, man against nature, nature against man, nature against God, God against nature. Very funny religion. Now, in the other mythologies, one puts oneself in accord with the world. If the world is a mixture of good and evil, you do not put yourself in accord with it. You identify with the good, and you fight against the evil. And this is a religious system which belongs to the Near East, following Zarathustra's time. It's in the biblical tradition, all the way in Christianity and Islam as well. This business of not being with nature, and we speak with sort of derogation of the nature religions. You see, with that fall in the garden, nature was regarded as corrupt. There's a myth for you that corrupts the whole world for us. And every spontaneous act is sinful because nature is corrupt and has to be corrected, must not be yielded to. You get a totally different civilization, a totally different way of living, according to your myth as to whether nature is fallen or whether nature is itself a manifestation of divinity, and the spirit being the revelation of the divinity that's inherent in nature.
But don't you think that Americans, modern Americans, have rejected this idea, this Indian idea, this ancient idea of nature as revealing the divinity because it would have kept us from achieving dominance over nature?
Yeah, but that's the biblical condemnation of nature that they inherited from their own religion and brought with them. God is not in nature. God is separate from nature, and nature is not God. And this distinction between God and the world is not to be found in basic Hinduism or Buddhism either. I'll never forget the experience I had when I was in Japan. To be in a place that never heard of the fall in the Garden of Eden. To be in a place where I can read in one of the Shinto texts, the processes of nature cannot be evil. When every impulse, every natural impulse is not to be corrected, but to be sublimated, you know, to be beautified. And the glorious interest in the beauty of nature and cooperation with nature and coordination so that in some of those gardens you don't know where nature begins and art ends. This to me was a tremendous experience, and it's another mythology.
Speaking of different mythologies, let's just have a little fun here. I took these from your atlas.
Oh, yes?
I'll read Genesis. I'll read from Genesis, and then you identify and read from the corresponding text.
Yes.
Genesis 1. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply.
Now this is from a legend of the Basari people of West Africa, Unumbote made a human being. Its name was man. Unumbote next made an antelope, named antelope. Unumbote made a snake, named snake. And Unumbote said to them, the earth has not yet been pounded. You must pound the ground smooth where you are sitting. Unumbote gave them seeds of all kinds and said, go plant these.
And Genesis 1, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good.
And from the Upanishad, then he realized, I indeed am this creation, for I have poured it forth from myself. In that way, he became this creation. And verily, he who knows this becomes in this creation a creator. That's the clincher there. Yeah. When you know this, then you've identified with the creative principle yourself, which is the God power in the world, which means in you. It's beautiful.